When one experiences loss and misfortune, one tends to deceive oneself, causing one to create a new life, convincing one they did the right thing. At a newspaper stand, I picked up the morning paper and saw the date on top. It was April, but the year was different. I had counted the days correctly. 14 months had disappeared while I was at Ardsleyville. I felt faint. My head spun. I searched the newspaper vendor's face, hoping for a sign of recognition, but none appeared. On 3 Alley, the lane was cleanly swept and there was a fresh coat of paint on my old house. I tried to open the door, but it was locked. I knocked and Mrs. Lee answered, dressed in a lavender sweatsuit printed with dark flowers. "Helen, what are you doing here?" "What are you doing in my house?" "We've been using it. My cousin and his family live here, though they went home to the countryside last week for the holiday." "Are you back for the holiday?" "What holiday?" "King Ming." Mrs. Lee drew her words out slowly, eyeing my Ardsleyville uniform. "You're using my land, my house. You were in America. We couldn't contact you. I didn't give it to you. You can stay if you want. It's not for you to decide." I pushed past her. The inside of the house had also been repainted. My old room was full of the belongings of Mrs. Lee's countryside cousin and his wife. Mr. Lee had died 8 years ago, and Haifeng and his wife had a son of their own, a 5-year-old whose photographs Mrs. Lee showed me. I was relieved to notice he didn't resemble you. Neighbors came by, though I couldn't remember most of their names, and they looked shocked when they saw me. Had I changed so much? I told them I'd come home because there weren't many jobs in New York, that you were staying with relatives until you finished school. To have been detained for over a year was embarrassing, like I'd been caught out of stupidity, and I couldn't let anyone know. Miss Lee gave me a pink sweatsuit to wear. I roamed the village without hitting a fence or a wall, swinging my arms and legs, gulping in the clean air. At the temple, I saw my name next to Yiba's, on a plaque with the names of villagers who'd given money for repairs. Yiba must have donated with the money I sent home. I ate meat and rice and vegetables and not oatmeal. Heard music and cars and people walking for hours without guards ordering me inside. I tucked blades of grass between my toes and pressed my thumbs against leaves and bark. The dirt smelled sweet, and the breath was as soft and clean as freshly laundered sheets. But the house was no longer my house. Mrs. Lee's cousin had a little girl, and her books and clothes were strewn across the room downstairs. Yiba's television was gone, a new one in its place. I found, hidden in a corner beneath the bed, one of your old shoes. I'd bought them for you that first winter in New York, before sending you here. I held a tiny gray sneaker in my palm, remembered slipping it onto your little foot, pulling the laces tight. You must have been wearing it on the flight from New York. Dirt had settled into the creases, and the sole left my palm blackened with dust. I couldn't find the other shoe. That night, I slept in my house. The next morning, I took a bus to Fuzhou with 5,000 yuan that Mrs. Lee had given me for taking over my house. Later, I would learn that the house was worth at least 15,000, even 20, but by then, it wouldn't matter. Downtown Fuzhou looked nothing like it had 20 years ago. Fountains spurted in a square, surrounded by statues of men and women with their arms raised with faces that look oddly European. People walked past me in business suits. In a telephone booth, I called the number for the loan shark, which I'd gotten from a neighbor at 3 Alley, and told the man who I was, my birthday, how much I had paid off before leaving New York, that I was in China and wanted to know the balance. "One moment," he said. "Let me check." I waited. Then the man got back on the phone and said, "Your debt has been paid. Your balance is now 0. I bit my fingers. Leon must have wired my payments, month after month, when I was in Ardsleyville. I bought an international calling card and dialed Leon's number, the one I thought I remembered. The phone rang twice and disconnected. No answer. No voicemail. I tried again and again and again and again. I stayed in the phone booth, attempting different combinations of phone numbers, all the numerical combinations that could possibly be Leon's, but none of them were the right one. I even dialed my old cell, a number I did remember, which was answered by a teenage girl. I'd never memorized the numbers of Dee or Hello Gorgeous. With each dead-end phone call, my optimism receded, until I was crying into the sleeve of Mrs. Lee's sweatsuit. You were lost. My family was lost. 14 months had disappeared, and I didn't even have a place to live. It was hunger that finally drove me out of the phone booth and into a nearby food stall, where I ate until the shakiness retreated and my despair hardened into ambition. Mrs. Lee had mentioned a nail salon, one of the first in Wuyi Square, and I found the address and introduced myself to the owner, a woman whose French manicure was flaking at the tips. "I worked in New York," I told her. "Give me 10 minutes and I can draw your face on your thumbnail." By nightfall, I had a job and a rented bed in a building full of Switzerlandese workers. A door slammed down the hotel hallway, followed by the sounds of footsteps. I stopped mid-sentence and heard two women talking, their voices fading as they walked toward the elevator, and felt like I had woken up from a trance. You'd asked me to tell you the truth, and now that I had, you look like you wish I hadn't. You couldn't call me because I was already in Ridgeboro, you said. I know that now, but back then I was so worried. But you found Leon, you even saw him. Didn't he tell you I was adopted? I tried to figure out what I should say next. You knew and didn't do anything? I didn't find him, I said. He found me. Throughout the book, it is repeatedly shown that they try to convince themselves that they made the right choices and decisions. Now I felt like I had really been punched. But you were safe, weren't you, with your adoptive parents? I could hear the pleading desperation in my own questions. How badly I wanted to believe you'd been fine, that I had done all I could. In the novel, Polly repetitively tries to convince herself that she did the right thing by not continuing to look for Deming and leaving him with his adopted family. She does end up convincing herself that she did the right thing until she meets Deming in Beijing many years later, and it all comes crashing down. He tells her that her assumptions were wrong and that he still wanted her to come back home and was not fully invested in the idea of being brought into another family. She says that she doesn't like the idea of him calling someone else mom when she was his mother. And when he reveals that he never called her mom and goes to sleep, she continues on to this trance that makes her rethink everything she has done. It is illustrated that when she was deported to China, her present self wanted to look for Deming, but the 19-year-old Polly was saying to leave him like she should have all those years ago on the beach. This explains the morality in her actions and where it came from. She develops in the book because when she first found out that she was pregnant, she decided to not have him, but ends up having him and loving him and second-guessing everything that is good and bad for him. She expresses through her actions and words that she longs for her family and her life in the past. But when she finally accepted the fact that life had moved on without her, she decides to get married and live in the country in which she was deported to. She realized that she should move on instead of stressing over the past. Anne is at peace because she has memories of Janice, grown up, and now knows that her adopted family treated her well and with care. She also knows that she has grown up to become successful. When Janice began looking for Anne, she was bound to create chaos and sadness in both their lives. Her curiosity brought sadness and would cause both of them to wonder what would have happened if she stayed with them, if she hadn't been taken when she was a baby, and if she hadn't left the day she came to visit them for the first time. Also, when they decide to look back in the past, it causes pain as well as regret. She went to the bathroom, then returned to her bed. It was late. She had an 8 o'clock meeting tomorrow morning with teachers at the conference, and after that, she would leave him. At any moment, she could switch off the light, and he would never find out what happened. He got under the covers, yet remained sitting. His mother checked to make sure the blinds were down, the curtains shut. She removed an eye mask, lined in pink fabric, from her bag. This novel is based off a true story that occurred in 2009. Both Deming and Polly were ready to go to bed. Also, it was dark out and they are in a hotel room, creating a setting in which it is gloomy and dark and uncomfortable. It compares childhood and adulthood for both Polly and Deming throughout the story, showing how both their lives have changed dramatically by this experience and how they have developed as a character. Time is used in many different aspects in the story as there are flashbacks and time lapses. Also, the story is not told in chronological order as we find out what Polly experienced after Deming finds her in Beijing. Both Deming and Polly have moved a lot from China and America back and forth as a means of showing that both countries have a significant value towards both of them. Also, they are moving from place to place in the form of themselves emotionally as they are changing from one mindset to another and changing their feelings, specifically anger and regret, towards each other. It's a little early to be driving across Chemong Lake. You could have drowned. Drowned? I was driving on water? You got guts, lady. This incident was showing Janice that it was risky coming to meet them and should turn back. This is because as a result, it caused sadness for everyone as she knows she cannot stay and has to leave before dinner to meet with her adoptive family, and no one knows how much pain this will cause. It is very snowy and she got stuck in a snowbank. This illustrates that this experience will be stuck with all of them forever and will make everyone constantly think of it. Also, it is very cold, which depicted how cold it was when she left the house, and so lifeless as everyone was very sad, and it was clear in the end that Anne and Barb would be cheering up by Rodney. In my mashup, I have no transitions except one. The one transition I have is to show that both of them were interrupted from the trance they were in from hearing Polly's past and were brought back to the present. I don't have any transitions because the past struck both of them hard and not smooth. For Polly, looking back into the past is hurting her and bringing back all of those terrible memories and emotions she had. As for Deming, it is because he has to hear that his mother went through all this while he thought that she had just ran away with a guy. The song I chose is Let Me Down Slowly by Alec Benjamin. The reason I chose the song is because it had a sad tone to it as well as sometimes a harsher beat, which represents his anger when he realized that she had just left him with his adoptive family. She made her own assumptions and moved on and lived a happy life while he carried this tragedy on his back his entire life. Also, because when Deming was younger, all this happened to him suddenly and out of the unknown, and in this sense, he wanted to be let down slowly. But unfortunately, he was just a little kid that had the misfortune of losing his mother.